They say two.
Nobody wants to even sit
Is
there.
that right?
Nobody wants to sit next
Probably
to
over
him.
time when they fill in and the fields and stuff.
Did they pay us to get that?
Hey,
They gave us the money.
No, I think
Yeah, they advocated. Close relationship, the last thing I say is very close relationship with the Parks Commission relative to appeals of fees and just
you mentioned in your mentoring.
be done. I don't say that, but we're fine.
And a quarterback at home.
Thank you.
Being 7 o'clock, we'll call the Marathon County Board of Supervisors to order. Please rise. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please remain standing because that will be followed by a moment of reflection. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
The adjourned annual meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, composed of 38 members, will convene at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, on Tuesday, January 21st at 7 p.m., and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
Thank you. I'd like to request that we have everyone silence their cell phones or put their or their electronic devices on silent or vibrate, please, as to not be an interruption to the meeting. And I would proceed to item number 5, and that's roll call, and request that all the supervisors please sign in. And we'll proceed. And I would like to welcome all the visitors that we have here, along with the viewing audience, at our January voters meeting of the Marathon County Board. So we will move on to item number B, presentations. And we have a presentation of the Sheriff's Office Award, and we have the Chief Deputy, Chad Billup, and I would invite him to the podium for the presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to have just a few minutes here again tonight in order to share with you some accomplishments by some of our staff. Internally at the Sheriff's Office, we have a mechanism by which to recognize really good work, and we call those contact sheets, and those go out between supervisor and employee and then back to myself and the sheriff. But there comes a time when the work of the employee goes but well beyond and above what is normal, exceptional work. And that's what we want to recognize here tonight. I want to start by introducing you to the staff that we have up here tonight. So we have Dave Druick, who's a deputy in the patrol division. We have Eric Stevens, who's with the corrections division. Tristan Wandine with the corrections division, and Tyler Kaufman, I think.
He's around the corner.
With the corrections division. I'll do my best to summarize these situations. Some I know a little bit better than others, but I want to start with Dave's. Dave's situation started back on December 14th of last year. What had happened was we had received a report of a vehicle in the ditch out on Highway 29 near Abbotsford. And what had happened was a passerby had stopped and had found 2 people in the vehicle, and there was a gentleman who was attempting to kill his significant other in the vehicle. That turned into a carjacking where the bystander who was trying to help had their car stolen from them. That car sped off across Highway 29, barrel rolled in the median, and that's when Deputy Druick and I believe Deputy Tatro responded. What they didn't know that they were getting themselves into was a situation with a person who was extremely high on methamphetamine. And this turned into a situation where they were trying to apprehend the person, and that person was doing anything and everything that they could to evade that arrest. During the ensuing arrest, Deputy Druick significantly injured his hand. As you can see, he's probably still wearing the brace. Deputy Druick is a tough son of a gun. And the reason I know that is because he went about the arrest, the follow-up, and everything else he had to do, reported his injury to his supervisor, and came back to work the next day and said, you know, I think I should probably go get this thing checked out. He showed me the x-ray of his hand, and when you have two bones or a bone completely separated and tented, yeah, that's probably a time to go get checked out. So he has a significant break to his hand, which required surgery. Now, for his efforts and for his heroism that day, he prevented a significant incident here in Marathon County. I truly believe, based upon everything that I've read and learned about this incident, that had he not done what he did, as well as Deputy Tatro, there would have been a different outcome. And I think that it was getting to the point where deadly force would have been used had he not been able to use the skills and the training that he has. So for his actions on December 14th, 2019, I would like to award Deputy Dave Druick with the Purple Heart for his injuries. Congratulations, Dave. Now, as you know, the jail has undergone a number of repairs over the last several months. So some of these awards actually occurred during the time of the construction, and we just have not had an opportunity to get the employees here in order to have them recognized. But on September 20th, at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Corrections Officer Kaufman was performing his routine booking duties when he observed an inmate seated on the floor in his cell. He could see that the inmate had his smock tied around his neck, and he was turning blue and struggling to breathe. He summoned help, entered the cell, removed the smock, and then assisted the inmate in breathing, and then got him to medical care. If not for his quick action and thinking, there is no doubt that that inmate would have perished. For his actions, we will be presenting him with a life-saving award here tonight. So Tyler? The next award I want to present is to Corrections Officer Eric Stevens. Eric is one of the newer employees here. You've been assigned to the courthouse, what, about 2 years now? Yes. And Eric is a court officer, so he is in and out of the jail on a regular basis. And his normal duties is getting inmates, getting them prepared for court, and making sure that they're to the judges on time. On this date, this was December 10th at about 12:35 in the afternoon, he was doing his normal duties when he encountered a situation where he found an inmate who had a plastic commissary bag. Now, a commissary bag is the bag that the inmates get their snacks and what's so forth in. He had it tied around over his head with a sheet tied around his neck, and in an attempt to take his life. Eric summons help. He then went into the cell and took the lead, cutting the sheet from the bunk and removing it from the inmate's neck, and then performed medical intervention, reviving the inmate who had become unresponsive. So for his actions on that date, I am again awarding him with a life-saving award. And our last award for this evening is Corrections Officer Tristan Wandine. Now, Tristan came to us from the prison system. He had worked for a prison up in the UP and transferred down to us just a couple of years ago. Right after Christmas, on December 28th at about 8:56 in the evening, he was doing his normal routine when he had heard a muffled sound coming from one of the cells. When he looked into that cell, he saw that an inmate had tied his pants around his neck and had been attempting to hang himself. That inmate had already turned purple when Tristan had summoned help, went in, and had to forcibly control the inmate in order to take the tension off the ligature. And as you can see, Tristan probably doesn't have a hard time removing tension from anything. But he was able to remove the tension and ultimately result in saving that inmate's life by allowing other staff to do their medical intervention, including steps towards CPR. So for his efforts, we would also like to award him with a life-saving award. And once again, I appreciate you taking or allowing us to take some time tonight in order to recognize these employees. We think they do amazing work, and this is just a small glimpse into the work that these folks do every day and the difficult and challenging jobs that they have. So thank you very much.
It's just another fine example of how the employees here in Marathon County and some of the employees go above and beyond in serving this great county and the citizens of this county and making it a better place for all of us. So again, thank you to all of the work that you do, and thank you, Chief Deputy. We will move on to item C, the consent agenda, item 8 through item 12A1. What is your pleasure? Motion by Supervisor Longenhan and second by Supervisor Butke. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Any discussion? Supervisor Schaefer.
Did the acting did I get informed that you are actually interviewing yet and we're just making so we actually are going to interview for okay, thank you.
Yes, at this point, there is additional interviews, but we are making this person acting interim at the time. Thank you. Any other discussion on the consent agenda items 8 through 12A1? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Supervisor Gums, if you could confirm, and Supervisor Schaefer, if you could confirm. Thank you, and we'll proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to resolutions. Item D, Public Safety Committee. D13, adopt policy on county support for sports events proposed to occur on county highways, Resolution 73-19, and this was postponed from the December meeting, and Supervisor McEwen with a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After the December meeting, we've had some discussions on this resolution, and it went to public safety and infrastructure also. And with that, it was determined that there's going to be a lot more that's going to have to be thought through before we bring another resolution. So I'm making a motion that we refer it back to public safety.
Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Robinson. Any discussion on the motion to refer back to the Public Safety Committee, Resolution R-7319? Seeing none, we will proceed to vote. Supervisor Boots, if you could vote and confirm. Thank you, and we'll proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We are moving on from public safety also. D14, support for state funding to hire more prosecutors for county-based district attorney's office. Third draft, resolution 1-20. Motion by Supervisor Nutting and second by Supervisor Stark. Any discussion? Supervisor Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On Thursday, I had asked if we could put an amendment in here for mental health wellness, but I just wanted to say that I felt like maybe instead of focusing on the district attorney's office, we should maybe create one in whole for all of Marathon County employees instead. So maybe that might be something for Health and Human Services instead. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Over to item E, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item E15, approve 2019 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations. Resolution 2-20. Supervisor Durham with the motion and Supervisor White with the second. Any discussion? This does require 2/3 majority vote. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. And on to item E16, initial resolution authorizing not to exceed $3,215,000 general obligation promissory notes for capital improvement plan projects. Resolution 3-20. This does require 3/4 majority vote of the board. This is to fund the CIP projects that were identified in the budget for the 2020 capital projects that were identified with bonding. And we have motion by Supervisor Schaefer and Supervisor Zareni with the second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. And we'll proceed, and the motion is carried unanimously. That obviously is 3/4. And we will move on to the resolution E17, resolution declaring the official intent to reimburse expenditures on capital improvement plan projects from proceeds of borrowing. Resolution 4-20. And that is a motion by Vice Chair McEwen and second by Supervisor Seiler. Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And now, item E18, a resolution providing for the sale not to exceed $8,500,000 general obligation promissory notes series 2020A for North Central Healthcare projects and capital improvement plan projects. Resolution 5-20. And we have Supervisor Johnson with the motion and Supervisor Rosenberg with the second. Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. And we'll proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. On to item F, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee and Marathon County Parks Commission. Item F, 19, amend the 2019 budget to approve allocation of outstanding usage payment to improvements at Sunnyvale Softball Complex, Resolution 6-20. And we have motion, Supervisor Durham with the motion and Supervisor Seifelt with the second. Any discussion? Supervisor Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we have a brief explanation of how we let this organization get 10 years behind?
Sure, we will have a presentation by the interim administrator on how we got here and the issues that were resolved and what steps we've taken to prevent it from happening in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I hope to address each of those issues that the chair raised and that Supervisor Schaefer raised. Let me begin with a little bit of background, and it's alluded to in the materials in your packet. The Wausau Area Softball Association has a long-standing history with Marathon County. They were instrumental in the acquisition of the land that ultimately was, that created or led to the creation of Sunnyvale Park. They have, throughout the park's existence, contributed, excuse me, a great deal to the construction and expansion of that facility. And they have a long-standing relationship, a close relationship with the Parks Commission, really in my mind relative to the resolution of disputes relative to any ongoing contract fees or the recovery costs that the Parks Department was seeking for the operation of those facilities. So it's a very long-standing relationship. To Supervisor Schaefer's point and alluded to by the chair, the situation relative to the non-payment of fees really begins in 2007. And that long-standing relationship with the Wausau Area Softball Association, throughout that relationship, we did not have, based on my review in working with Jamie Polly, the current Parks Director, we did not have a very consistent practice with regard to the utilization or requirement, rather, of contracts for the use of Sunnyvale. So in 2007, we had a contract that provided for fees for the use by the Softball Association. Partial fees, partial contracts payments were made. However, from 2008 to 2015, there was no contract in place. From 2016 forward, there were contracts in place. So we have that partial payment from '07. We have a period where no contract was in place and the Wausau Area Softball Association was allowed to continue utilizing Sunnyvale, during which no payments were made. And then we have a period from 2016 to 2019 where those payments are current. So that is the background of the situation that developed, and as alluded to and as referenced in the packet, that is a significant amount of funds that were not paid, that is significant outstanding balance. And in late 2018, in speaking with the Parks Director, she learned of this issue, reached out to administration, and we put in place a plan to attempt to recover that debt. Jamie worked diligently in attempts to do that. Ultimately, what occurred is we ended up working with Scott and Corporation Counsel to consider filing legal suit for those outstanding payments. That ultimately led to the agreement that's before you today that was signed in late December for a fee resolution. Now, let me tell you why that fee resolution was reached. So that period of time when there was non-payment for the services at Sunnyvale, based on state law, statute of limitations, and the nature of the dispute at hand, we are prohibited from going back any further than 6 years. So we have a 6-year statute of limitations. So again, based on the history I gave you, we're current from 16, 17, 18, 19. So arguably, at best, we would argue about whether we could get 2014, 2015, and we would argue maybe we could get 13. Now, what that boils down to is if you're allowed to collect only 14 and 15, it's approximately $72,000, short of $72,000. If we're allowed, after arguing and filing legal suit, to get that additional year, it's approximately $101,000. That assumes we get the full amount that we are requesting. At the same time, another area of dispute with the Softball Association was the amount of the services, the value of the services that were provided at Sunnyvale. By their calculation, that amount was $87,000, which was what they offered. So that gives you the context, the lay of the land with regard to the potential legal dispute and the limits on our potential recovery. So Jamie met with Scott, myself, and Brad. Based on our review and assessment of the situation, we believed and continue to believe the $87,000 resolution was appropriate. Now, that takes us to today, and I think you all have the next question in mind, which is how do we ensure that we don't get in this position ever again? Because I think everyone involved in those meetings recognized that we didn't want to be in that position, and quite honestly, it was not appropriate. So let me tell you what we did. First, we instituted a change in practice. Simply put, without a contract in place, events don't take place at county parks with county resources expended. Okay, so we changing that practice that took place between 2008 and 2015, where continued use was permitted without a contract in place. Second, in working with Jamie and Scott, we put in place some significant revisions in that draft contract. First and foremost, we wanted to accomplish one goal, which was to disincentivize non-payment. That is, we wanted to incentivize people to pay. So we added late fees, a late fee provision within our contract which didn't exist. We also allow for the imposition or requirement of deposits. So for certain organizations where we're not sure of revenue stream, or perhaps they don't have a strong history of payment, we can require an upfront portion of that overall fee to be paid. And then the last piece that we're continuing to work on is we have a recognition that we need to have a clear policy that provides for the allocation of some portion of user fees to the maintenance of parks facilities. I think it's important to note the recommendation from the Parks Commission to take the $87,000 that we were able to recover based on this settlement and put that toward the park is in servants of this idea that user fees, the groups that are paying to utilize our facilities, are doing so while the rest of the community, if I want to go to Sunnyvale, I don't pay to go to Sunnyvale. But user fees to use this public good, there needs to be some tie between that utilization for special events and the ongoing maintenance of those facilities. And currently there isn't one. We just as an analogy, we just had this conversation relative to what you would, more traditional facilities like the courthouse. We do rent space in the courthouse to the Department of Corrections. And historically, we hadn't had that same policy where we'd set aside a portion of those revenues to make sure that if we did maintenance in the Department of Corrections area that they rent, that we had a source of funds instead of coming to the county for all of those funds. So we put that in place last year. We recognize that we need to come up with that same approach moving forward relative to parks facilities. So those are the three things we're doing moving forward. And again, that last one, we don't have an answer yet, but we're working on it. So I hope that answers your question. And again, our focus at this point was, I should say in December, is the resolution an appropriate one? In our judgment it was. And then how do we make sure we never get to that point again? Because again, we recognize there were some things we could have done certainly better. Does that answer your question?
Supervisor Schaefer, you had a follow-up?
Thank you. And sometimes maybe you can't get blood out of a turnip. But I hope you're going to use these policy for any group that we charge a fee for, not just in the courthouse or the park. There's other things that we charge a fee. We should if the policy is in place, it should be straight across the board for anybody that is charged a fee.
I think that as a goal is a great goal. It's gonna take, in being honest with you, I'm always gonna give you my honest assessment. That's gonna take some time because we really, as the board has asked us to do moving forward, is develop a cost recovery policy. We have a significant amount of work to do that, and simply developing a consistent methodology by which we calculate cost is that first step, and we need to take that step. But I appreciate the point, and it's well taken.
Supervisor Zereni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During this period of operating without contracts, are we aware of other events that might have been conducted there where we didn't have contracts and we didn't receive reimbursement?
I'm not.
Supervisor Nutting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Might we have a brief report from our Parks Director of the current maintenance improvements that take place, and then what additional improvements might take place as a result of this $87,000 to improve this facility? It is very important, and we attract residents from around the county to this event, and it does need improvement. Thank you.
Is there any objection from the board? Without objection, Jamie, if you would.
Thank you. We have, done routine maintenance over the years. We take care of the players' benches, the infields. We do as much as we can for the daily to make it safe for our users. We have not, however, in the past couple of years, spent any additional funds on Sunnyvale to improve it beyond what the regular maintenance is. There are needs for it, especially with the infields. The batter's boxes, we've gotten a lot of complaints from not only the WASA group, but also our tournaments and youth of just how hard the ground is and how unsafe it's getting. So with this amount, if you're approving it tonight to go towards that park, that'll be our first improvement, is to upgrade those infields so that they're safe to play on with better material. And then we do have a list of events, or of items. It was in our outdoor recreation plan that we can improve that park with updated lighting, updated fencing, potentially irrigation to make the outfields better, but we have a list. But I think first and foremost, the infields is what we'll concentrate on for our safety.
Okay, Supervisor Gomes. Okay, all right. Any other discussion? Any other questions? This does require a 2/3 majority vote. This is an amendment to the 2019 budget. Are we ready to vote? We will proceed to vote. And we will proceed. And the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us back to announcements. We have next meeting of the county board. The educational meeting will be here Thursday, February 20th, 7 p.m. And the next business meeting will be February 28th. That is at 7:30. We need, the clerk needs signatures from the Public Safety Committee, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee, Parks Commission, and the interim administrator. Okay, I also have one other announcement. I received a email this morning, just so that everyone's aware. The construction company that is working or is working on the jail has completed the vast majority of their work. They are in the process of vacating their equipment. And so next in February, we will be bringing a resolution to end the jail emergency, to terminate that emergency. There still will be a little bit of painting and surface work on some of the outside structure in the parking area. It's not on the agenda for discussion, but if you have questions, Supervisor.
I just want to know, Mr. Chair, is there a timetable for bringing the inmates back? Yeah, or is that a little bit far out yet? A little far out?
We'll have a report in February from, because at that time, we'll also know when DOC is ready to do their inspections and stuff like that. So we'll have a report on the jail. But the parking lots will be both open back up to the employees. Target date right now is February 14th. And the Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Rules Review Committee, I know we had scheduled our next meeting for the 20th at 5:30 before the county board meeting, and I'm requesting that we can move it to the 25th, the Tuesday meeting, to 6 o'clock. I'm not going to be here on the 20th, so hopefully that works for everybody. And that meeting's not till 7:30, so I think if 6 o'clock would be soon enough to meet on that Tuesday. So if there's a problem, let me know, but just wanted to make that announcement. Thank you.
Supervisor Seiler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you recall, after our budget meeting, there was discussion. I had talked to you about the opportunity for the board to receive training on the priority-based budgeting that I know we've started back in 2016, and I know I've heard conversation, it's been a bit of an issue getting everything loaded. But I noticed that in the December 10th Executive Committee meeting minutes, there was discussion by Exec Committee about the need to work with the board on more information to do better with the budget. And I was just wondering if there's any thoughts yet on when some of that might take place, because I know looking at some of the notes back from when we had the presentation, the hope was that board members would be able to have an annual review, be able to go in and take a look at the different programs, the different quartiles, and that was very exciting. But that was 2016, and so I'm just wondering what the plan is for 2020. I don't know if the last term, those new board members at that time ever had the same report that we did initially back in 16, but I would hope that sometime in the near future that we could have at least a report on where it's at. Maybe, again, remind me what I heard in 2016, because it's a great tool, and I feel that we're losing out by not having that available to us at this time. So if we could have something in the near future, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so you're aware, the executive committee, if you take a look at the discussion in the minutes, they are trying to prioritize the interim administrator's time. There's 42 or 34? 41. We're up to 41 projects that in the work plan on the administrators, so we can add one more, but the executive committee is working on trying to prioritize. Unfortunately, being short-staffed in administration, it's going to be difficult, but we will put it on the...
And I appreciate that, but I am thinking, again, I don't know how much is spent every year, but it would be great if we could have even a basic presentation on it. That'd be Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Durham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a joint airport board meeting last Friday, and just a couple notes from that meeting, because we received the statistics from December, which basically summarize the whole year. And a couple notes out of that. The employments were up for the year. Airports always look at employments. That's a very big figure, very important figure, because from those you get a $4.50 PFC from each passenger that boards. And we didn't set a record or anything, but it was up to 141,000. And that was a 13% increase from the year before. The record for Seaway is about 160,000, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to say that was probably, it's either 2006 or 2010. But that's the record that we had. We did have, unfortunately, 21% increase in cancellations. but we can always blame somebody else for that. And otherwise, things look good. The load factors, what percentage of the seats are filled? 2 airlines had over 80%. One was in 73%. That's considered to be very good. And when your load factors go up, if they go up significantly, an airline might look to putting in other flights. And of course, our management is exploring that all the time. It's a very difficult process to do that now. You go to the airlines, they don't come to you. And they don't even come to national conventions. You will see virtually no airline presence at a big convention, a national convention somewhere. It's very different today than it was just a few years ago when I first became a member of Seaway and tried to learn what's going on. The other thing I would say financially, and from a construction point of view, all of the boarding bridges are done. That's a very expensive proposition, and there have been glitches. They're being worked out. They're all functional. We're going to begin construction on the reconstruction of the terminal, the terminal part, the gates, and the inside and so forth. And the final choices will be made for the various colors and the decor and so forth. So that'll be a big project, and coming down the line in the future is going to be rebuilding of the north-south runway. And that's a very big thing. And the planning for that, there's a decoupling that has to take place. It's extremely complicated. The FAA is much to the benefit, I think, of safety, is very cautious. And it takes a long time to do these things. But, last year in 2019, I don't believe anyone was killed in a commercial accident in the United States. I don't think so. So that's a pretty good record. These are professional people. Finally, from a financial point of view, and you can look at this, on the Seaway website if you want to look at all the details. But a summary always shows us revenue over expenses, and for the year, we had over expenses of over $700,000 this year. But caution of that, out of that will come paying off the bonds and so forth. There's a certain earmark for that. Plus, from the winter, there will be some additional expenses. So it won't be like, I couldn't say, oh, there's a profit of $700,000. No, but there is a profit, probably going to be over $200,000. So that airport is running quite well, and I think you can thank, of course, the board members, the management for that. They're doing a really good job.
We gotta
Thank you.
try to keep announcements to announcements, and we're getting a little bit excessive, and it's not been agendized. Supervisor Schaefer, announcements.
In the absence of Supervisor Opal, there is a Western Towns Association meeting a week from Thursday at the town of Rib Mountain. Rib Mountain, I think it's 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, correct. Okay, any other announcements? Seeing none, I will take the infamous motion, Supervisor Vol with the motion, Supervisor Sly with a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.